Hi, my name is Goldie Jones, and I am a writer, director, creative director. And what you're about to listen to is a small highlight from my podcast, the Glitch Gestalt podcast. If you like what you hear, you can access the full podcast over on my Patreon page, which I will leave a link to in the description below. And if you want to support the podcast or me as a filmmaker, feel free to join the Patreon family over there and get access to a bunch of other offers and content relating to screenwriting and filmmaking, in addition to getting access to the full podcast. So, without further ado, enjoy. If you were going to write what you would think would be the perfect horror, what would be the tropes that you really want to see in it? I'm imagining something leaning kind of Clive Barker-y, just
like Barker Romero-esque of pointing out flaws in our society by using monsters or this monsters theme, a la the original Dawn of the Dead. How
right.
It's about racism and capitalism. Actually, that's what the movie's about.
Although Romero contested that pretty adamantly for quite a while.
He did. But I still don't I still can't unsee it from when I was younger, being like, no, man, look at this. This is what he's trying to say, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's no way to not infer that given the sociological, political environment that film was made in. Right. In the middle of the civil rights era, there's no way that even if it was just a subconscious instinct on his part, there's no way that wasn't there. I mean, the world that we live in informs so much about horror, like the Cold War, the fear of nuclear apocalypse informed so much early horror with the radioactivity created these monsters and right. The Red Scare and the fear of communism.
So I was trying to remember a movie. I was like, oh wait, this horror movie,
Creature from the Black Lagoon,
yeah,
The Fly, all of these monster movies where it comes from science and the invasion from the outside with aliens being an allegory for communism, the Red Scare. So these social and political influences create our monsters.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was deep.
But those are things I like about horror movies, though. They show you things in a way, in a different kind of light. You don't usually expect that. People don't expect monster movies to paraphrase to have a meaning or a thought behind them.
Yeah.
And even if Romero does contest that, and I knew he always did, that's still how I always saw that original living in the mall, how we're all just zombies for capitalism.
Yeah. Well, the Night of the Living Dead, clearly commentary on racism.
Yeah, the main character, a black man, lives through the whole event only to be killed by white honkies through the window, without a thought. And then,
yeah. Because what we assume is the monster, right? I mean, that's what I always loved about the zombie genre in general, is that yes, the monsters are scary, the zombies are scary, but the real danger was always the other humans.
Yeah, that's you can hold out, right? Like in a traditional, let's call it a Romero Zombie movie, right? As long as you have food, you could probably hold out for a while. It's just the people that are going to come and take your stuff. It's the other humans you have to contend with. Yeah. Zombies become your day-to-day background threat.
Right.
in the third movie, Day of the Dead, when that's a really good one for people are the true monsters, because they're in a subterranean basement and it's half military and half scientists. Right. And the military, everybody's starting to lose people, and the military is starting to want to take more and more control as they get this new leader, and it just causes this complete breakdown in their society. And it's truly the zombies are just outside; they're not in a lot of the movie. They're just that ever-present threat. But really, you got to worry about who you're bunked up with.
Yeah, 28 Days Later, the real danger was the other people.
I just watched that again. That's a couple weeks back. Yeah.
Such a good movie. It's probably my favorite zombie movie, with the remake of Dawn of the Dead being the second one. And then, of course, Shaun of the Dead. You got to have Shaun of the Dead.
Which is just great. And I really enjoyed the remake of Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I love Sarah Polley too, so give me zombies and Sarah Polley. I'm pretty happy.
And Ving Rhames, like, he's so great in that movie.
True.
And the dad from Modern Family too.
Right. And funny, like, the most horrifying moment in that movie to me was when the woman got cut with the chainsaw. It wasn't even zombie attacks.
That was a pretty terrifying moment of, like, everybody trying to escape, and, like, they're finally gonna do it, like, and then that happens, and it's what that whole sprint at the end to the boat.
Yeah.
And if you keep watching through the credits when they land on that island, and you're just all like, yep, this is how it is. Like,
you're better off in the mall.
You know, that's the thing. They would have been better off there.
But I mean, it's all a temporary solution anyway.
And yeah, in that kind of outbreak, our whole breakdown, our society would break down. You would just, it's tough. Like,
and I mean, that is the question of, like, the zombie apocalypse, right? Like, what are we as a species? What are we as human beings without this framework of culture and civilization that kind of keeping us in check? Like, do we just revert back to barbarism? Do we form a new society? Do we work cooperatively to maintain, like, our species survival? What do we become without civilization?
From our media that we get to consume, it seems like we break down back into barbarism, like 10 out of 10 times or something.
Yeah.
That or we, like, elevate ourselves to, like, Logan's Run, right? Which isn't much better.
No. Differently problematic.
Right.
For sure.
But if you look at, like, I mean, that's what it seems like. That's what's going to happen. We'll just break down into little colony pods after the first few years.
And then maybe at some point we grow big enough again to form new civilizations. But I mean,
you hope that zombies die out, like.
We as a society survive purely by cooperation. Countries and cities and cultures survive through cooperation.
Yeah. That's why we came together.
I mean, we created it by working together. We created empires. We created cities. Like, what we are capable of creating together is so vastly more impressive than what one individual can do on their own. Like this rugged individualism of, like, heartland America, of this ideology that you don't need anyone else and you just pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. It's like you can only lift yourself so far. We can grow so much farther as a community and as a species working together towards a singular goal. That's the only reason we have gotten anywhere as a species, is because of our ability to communicate and cooperate. Right. That's my political soapbox.
The whole one-man thing does remind me of, like, there's a scene in the original Dawn of the Dead, and it's playing this country song over it, and it's like all these dudes in camo with their rifles drinking beer, like, out together shooting zombies in fields and hanging out. But they're also, like, it kind of holds a mirror up to our own brutality, because they've hung some zombies in trees and they're shooting them with guns, and it's just like, yep. There's
when we just strip away the humanity of these other people.
Right. Like, they do the same thing in, like, the color remake of Night of the Living Dead, where it really points it out more, because the person who survives sees it at the end. She's, like, alive and walking to the camp of the people who saved her, but they're also, like, straight up torturing these zombies. Yeah. So it's like, who saved me? Like,
and that kind of ties back in with what we were talking with, like, I Am Legend. Like, what if these are sentient beings and you've just decided that they're monsters? Like, you've just stripped them of any humanity and autonomy, and just now you're free to kill them and torture them without having any conscience about it.
Yep.
But
just because you decided you were the hero, right?
Never be certain you're the hero. Never be sure.
Wait, are we the baddies? Wait.
Right? PBS is actually doing a series on zombies and the history of zombies, like
Oh,
Haitian
cool.
zombies and the West African
Like,
origins of zombies versus the
hmm
Romero zombie,
right.
um, and like the the interpretation of the zombie and the changes in the mythos of the zombie to reflect different, again, cultural and political and
Yeah.
racial
To
issues.
reflect different things.
Yeah.
That's
So that's a
that,
really fascinating,
that is
worth
pretty
checking
cool.
out series. They're on
Yeah.
YouTube. They're doing a 3-part series on YouTube under their Storied series from PBS, and then they're releasing a full hour-long documentary about zombies and horror.
That's pretty rad.
Yeah,
And also worth mentioning, a good like Haitian voodoo zombie movie would be Serpent in the Rainbow.
they bring up that book.
Like I'd not read the book. I watched the movie. I was really young when I watched it, and it scared me as a teen. I was like, what? But that's one of the ones I've seen where I'm like, you can actually get some voodoo zombies and not just your like face eating
Mm-hmm.
like hordes of undead.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, that like an actual zombie master controlling
yep, controlling people.
slaves, enslaving the bodies of the dead, the souls of the bodies of the dead.
A great scene with like a lady getting up at dinner, this posh dinner, and like getting on the table and saying something in like Creole French and like eating a glass.
Yeah.
That movie's pretty brutal. I enjoyed it very much. Um,
I haven't
oh,
seen, or the only thing I know about it is from the PBS series where they were talking about Haitian zombies. Apparently, practitioners don't particularly appreciate it,
hmm.
but
I, hmm. Yeah, I'd have to read up on it.